All right, let's
Yes.
do it. All right, so you're here because you possibly heard me make some statement about taking control of your arrows. And in that analogy, what I'll cover today is that a business owner without control of their sales and marketing systems is like an archer with no arrows. So we're here to talk about taking back control of your business and life by taking control of your arrows. So today's roadmap, here's what we're hopefully going to cover. How sales and marketing is like archery, but more importantly, why you should care. Why you should even care about this archery framework. Number two, what it means to apply this framework for you, your business, and ultimately your life. And third, to destroy any excuses so we can take action. So here we are with number one, how sales and marketing is like archery and why you should care. So here's what we aspire to. Again, am I a comic book nerd? Do I watch this show? No, but I believe it's a DC character. I believe his name is Arrow, which is appropriate because evidently his superpower is he's really accurate with a bow and arrow. So mask or not, that's kind of the joke we started with Jeff. You know, not all bad guys wear masks and not all good guys. I always commented that it was interesting to me that Superman didn't wear a mask, but he put on glasses and we couldn't recognize the resemblance between Clark Kent. Just a business suit and glasses was enough. And I'm not sure I wouldn't be able to recognize that guy on the street if his mask was off. That's a whole nother story. So this is what we aspire to, and yet we may feel a little less than real. We may feel a little cartoonish, and worse than that, very cartoonish. So I'm here if you would consider to help you consider being more the professional archer than maybe the cartoon character. Now, am I here to make you an archery or bow and arrow expert? No, I'm here to establish a framework of how this analogy helped me get clear and get control over my sales and marketing and made a difference between my life and business running me rather than me running it. So very quickly, the anatomy of an arrow is simply this. There is a shaft that provides all the integrity for that arrow. The arrow tip, which is a sharp pointed thing, sometimes even consisting of razor blades, because let's be honest, whether you love fluffy animals or you're a vegan, people used to feed their families by killing living protein with these things. And so they had to have a mechanism on the end that delivered the kill shot. The shaft going down is the fletching or the veins, we'll talk about that, and the knock. Now, whatever you consider that the arrow has to be sharp to do what it does, the arrow tip. The shaft needs to have a combination of rigidity and flexibility. Here's why. When you load up all the spring energy, the potential energy inside of the bow, and you release that potential energy and it's converted to kinetic energy as it mashes with great force into the knock, there is inertia, okay? Which means the knock end, the end on the right, assuming that you can see this the same direction I can, starts to move before the end on the left does. So it actually flexes, it bows like a choo-choo train. If you've ever been around one, it's a very long train with a lot of cars. The front end will move very slowly, well before the back end moves. But it loads so much energy in each shock and spring between each car, the front moves slow enough to get that you can get out of the way. The back lunges so fast, it'll crush you. And that has happened when people didn't know the front was moving and they were going between cars at the back end. The same thing here, as energy is transferred into the knock, it literally will flex this shaft. Therefore, if the shaft is too rigid, you can just start to get ahead of me mentally of where I'm going with this and how it relates to our business. If it's too rigid, it will be brittle and it will snap from that flex. So there has to be some flexibility in our sales and marketing plan. Why? Because if you're an engineer or used to be an engineer that consulted all over the world to oil and gas, and in the price of a barrel of oil goes to negative, an unprecedented thing, meaning not only will I not pay you for the oil, but you got to pay me to store it, or a pandemic strikes and we're all locked down and millions of people without jobs, do we have to be flexible? Yes. And yet If it's too flexible, it's like trying to shoot a noodle out of a bow, and that's not going to work, as the proverbial shooting pool with a rope. So there has to be a combination between rigidity and flexibility. Too rigid, it snaps under pressure. Too flexible, it's not an arrow. It has no structural integrity. So that being said, we've got to find this combination. And I'll now relate this anatomy of an arrow to the anatomy of our sales and marketing. So we'll start at the knock. And we'll start with the term brand identity. And you've probably heard this before. But you may be thinking brand identity relates to your logo or your slogan or your font and color scheme for all of your marketing materials. And that can be part of it, but I would have you consider that the Golden Arches in the beginning did not sell burgers and fries and cherry pies for McDonald's. The Nike swoosh did not sell shoes in the beginning. It meant nothing. The only thing that the logo and the brand identity does is remind one of the experience they had with the brand. But you have to first have an experience for that brand identity to matter. So I would have you consider that the Golden Arches now represent, hey, it isn't good food, it isn't exceptional quality, but it is acceptable to some people, and they know they can get it fast, and the fries taste the same whether you're in Beirut or Beijing or any other B town you can think of, or Boston. I like alliteration. So your brand identity is not just those things. I would think about the Nike swoosh. I would have you consider that the silhouette of Michael Jordan dunking with his legs spread out is one of the most famous things. That probably sold more shoes for Nike than the swoosh did. So let's talk about what brand identity is for the purposes of this discussion. And you've heard this question before, and you'll hear it again. Who do you serve? What problem do they have? Who are you? And how do you solve it? Interestingly, the brand identity didn't start with you, the business owner. It didn't start with your solution. It actually started with who? Your audience, your ideal client, your customer, your avatar, whatever you want to call that. So being crystal clear about who you serve, what problem they have, and who you are and how do you solve it. Again, there may be a lot of people in your space that can do what you do, but they don't necessarily do it like you do. And there will be a tribe or audience or a group of avatars that will resonate with your brand, your style, your technique, your panache, whatever you want to call it, and how you deliver that solution. Again, you can have a proprietary solution, but it may look similar to someone else's, and that's okay. Now next, and so the knock is the thing that engages the arrow to the bow mechanism. It is what holds it in place, but it also is, it fits the string tight enough that it stays in place, but it's loose enough so that it comes off when it's supposed to. So this may change over time. It's got to be, again, somewhat tight, but somewhat loose so it can solve its purpose. I really resonate with this analogy. I hope you do as well. Next, the fletching is literally when arrows were anciently homemade before we had the modern manufacturing practices that we do, where they're like vinyl now or some composite. They were made out of animal feathers. They're not just there for looks. The fletching is actually there in a spiral pattern, which gives the arrow a spin. And the reason a spin is important is just like you understand any projectile, like the reason that a firearm has, it's called a rifle, is because there's rifling in the barrel, which means there's a spiral pattern, which gives a spin to the projectile as it goes down the barrel. To use a sports analogy, is if you've ever seen a quarterback in American football throw a football without a spiral, without a spin, it tends to not be as aerodynamic, and it looks like a dying duck flying through the air. And the same is the case if you think about baseball. A knuckleball, which is a random pitch, is the very fact that the ball isn't spinning. So the spin of the ball determines whether it goes straight, up, down, or sideways, thus curves, fastballs, or whatever. But the knuckleball is literally the pitcher nor the catcher knows exactly where it's going to go. It flies erratically, and therefore neither does the batter, if you're familiar with that analogy. But anyway, as our fletching is what gives a true spin, and therefore the arrow will stay on the path that was intended. We call that the brand congruency and authenticity, and I put in parentheses mindset. Now, everything for me starts with mindset, because if you get very clear and if you understand why you're doing something, the how becomes easier. As I like to say, if you don't want to do a thing, one excuse is as good as another. You don't need but one reason to not do it if you already didn't want to do it. But if you're committed to doing something, maybe a million good reasons couldn't stop you no matter what. If you're committed, there's nothing that'll stop you. If you're not committed, one excuse is as good as another. So mindset is very clear on why we do what we do. So a lot of us have heard of brand identity, but what about brand congruency and authenticity? Are we true to our brand? Us. So it doesn't really start yet with the mindset of the ideal client. It starts with our own mindset. Let's define what this means. Do they know who they are? Because if they have an identity crisis and that's not your specialty, you're going to spend all your time trying to help them figure out who they are before you can ever get around to helping them. And for anybody in fitness or coaching or anything like that, is if they think they're big boned or they have bad genetics or they have some genetic predisposition or something, which could very well be true. But if that's the Kool-Aid that they're drinking, then they've already decided that that might work for you, but that don't work for me. And that could be anything: a diet regime, a lifestyle practice, a fitness routine, whatever it is, they've already decided it won't work for them. Second thing is, do they know they have the problem? Because if you spend all your time trying to convince them that they have a problem, then you're just in the fighting business. You ought to quit this and take up MMA, because you'll just be fighting all the time. It'll be like listening to kids fight. No, it's my toy. No, it's my toy. No, it's mine. No, it's mine. You do have a problem. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Oh my gosh. Ain't nobody got time for that. And so then if they're clear on who they are and that they do have the problem and they're seeking a solution, more importantly, possibly, is do you know who you are and do you actually believe you can help them? The reason this is important is because if you don't actually believe you can help them, if you have any kind of imposter syndrome, then let's talk about just briefly imposter syndrome. I hear this a lot from entrepreneurs, not just beginners, people that have been at it a while. And I say, cheer up. You're in good company, because I think everybody to some degree has some imposter syndrome. And I think that's an indication that you're not pathological, that you're human, and you're saying, you know, who am I to try to help other people? I'm not perfect. I'm just on a journey, and then maybe I'm further down the road than they are, and I've figured some things out, excuse me, and maybe I can help them figure some stuff out too, which is true, or should be. But if you don't believe you can help them, the other flip side to imposter syndrome is having no confidence whatsoever. And if you don't believe in you, there's no way in the world you should expect them to believe in you, because that's not leading from the front. If you say, hey, you go over there and try to figure some stuff out, and if it works out, let me know and I'll come join you. That's not leadership. That's sitting on the bench. So we have to lead from the front. Leading from the front means I'm betting on me. I suggest you do the same. Else why would they part with their hard-earned money to buy your solution? So do you actually believe you can help them? That's a big deal. So there's this balance inside the tension of this so-called imposter syndrome. To have some degree, some level of humility. Who are you? And why do you think you got some stuff figured out? On the other hand, you do have a solution to their problem, and you have a moral responsibility, if that's true, to go and deliver to them. So that breaks down the barrier to sales right there. Let's keep rolling. Everybody's good with that. The shaft, I told you, adds the flexibility and the structural integrity for this whole operation. So your story, as it relates, so your story matters. Your brand story, your personal story, if you are the brand, your story matters, but only in as much as it relates to your ideal client story. Because let's face it, you have to have a combination of being extraordinary and ordinary. And let me give you this example. And look, I have no original thought. I sit on the shoulders of giants who did the same. There's not much original thought. There is ingenuity, and we can come up with new ways to repackage old ideas. But pretty much the idea here is to be able to tell a story, because we're storytellers and we're story listeners and we love stories. But if you are too ordinary, if your life is totally a mess, If you haven't figured anything out, they're wondering why in the world they would deal with you in the first place. If you're too extraordinary, if there's no ordinary to you, you're just always been exceptional. You were born gifted. You've never struggled with relationships or money or fitness. You've always been an ideal weight. Whatever the case may be, if you're too extraordinary, they still don't want to listen to you because they're like, well, that works for you, but I'm ordinary. So there's this combination of being ordinary, like them, but extraordinary. And did you figure out how to get from point A to point B, which is hopefully what they want. They're at A and they don't like it, and they want to be at point B. And so this is one of the greatest ways to write a headline for anything you're doing, a subject for an email, a headline for a sales page, whatever your marketing message may be, is this formula. How to get yay without boo. Yay is yay, the stuff they want, and boo is boo, the stuff they don't want. How to get yay without boo, and then you can put a time element in 12 minutes, 12 days, 12 years, whatever it takes. And so the reason I bring that up is because the marketplace has changed. Think about fitness several decades ago when everybody was looking something for nothing. They were looking for an apparatus or a pill that they could take or strap on their body when it comes to apparatus and sit on the couch and lose weight and get in shape without doing anything. They didn't have to worry about what they ate or exercising. It was magic. Now look at how that shifted. Now we've got keto. We've got all kinds of diets to say you can never, ever, 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 ever eat anything you like ever again. You're going to be eating dirt and raw meat. I'm exaggerating, of course. I'm a comedian. It's what I do. You know, it's gone to hyperdrive of you got to own and do tough stuff. Look at Beachbody. Beachbody is a multi-billion-dollar brand that made some of the hardest workouts known to man. None of this sitting on the couch with a Thigh Master or something that stimulates your abdominals. It is workout until you throw up, drop dead, the paramedics resuscitate you, and then you work out again. Now I'm exaggerating slightly, but you got to admit that Beachbody and P90X and Insanity and all those workouts work because people recognize the fact, hey, I got to take supplements. I got to eat really good. I got to work out a lot. I got to do cardio, but I got to also do resistance training. I got to do this and I got to do this. I got to go out in the sun and get fresh air and get vitamin D and holy smoke. So it shifted from thinking you're going to get something from nothing. So that story has changed as it relates to what the client's expectations are. And again, getting them what they want without what they do not want. This is a storytelling shaft of the arrow. What that means to you is this story nowadays is best told over time. It's hard to pitch somebody on an elevator, whether that's proverbial or literal. How long are you on an elevator with somebody? I always talk about an elevator pitch. That means how long would it take me to tell somebody what I got and see if they want it on an elevator? That's hard to do. I know we got Twitter, but the fact of the matter is an old saying was you had to get in front of a potential customer 6 to 7 times before they even considered consuming your content. Nowadays, we're so marketed to, we got so much banner blindness, that may have doubled or tripled. I don't know. But it takes a long time to get a message across. So the story is best told over time. Now consider the product launch formula by the godfather and the grandfather of all that we do marketing online, Jeff Walker. The product launch formula was taking where people had these gigantically long sales pages. So they had a sales page. So you ran some type of advertisement. Somebody clicked, got on your sales page, and they had to spend hours reading. Now that's before somebody invented the VSL, which is the video sales letter. So I don't have to read. Somebody reads the sales letter to me. This is before we had dial-up. We didn't have the bandwidth to upload and watch videos and stream them like we do now. So it was a long form sales letter, and people got impatient and got to the point that they wouldn't sit and consume that much content at one time. So Jeff invented what was called the sideways sales letter, meaning take that long story you're telling and break it up into bite-sized daily pieces. Think in terms of how much soap Procter & Gamble sold by inventing the, you guessed it, the soap opera.
I'm feeling that everything's good before I have.
Hey Jeff, can you mute?
Water, Diet Pepsi, we did have serum.
There you go. Jeff's got some background noise in there. Appreciate that, bud. So the story is best told over time, like the soap opera. Nobody ever figured out how the soap opera was going to end in one day. It wasn't one sitting. It was meant to be consumed over 50 years because people come and people go, but the stories never change. It's always bad people versus good people and all this backstabbing and drama. But it sold a lot of soap. So the story is best told over time. Well, it went from the product launch formula to it has evolved now into challenges where we use Facebook or some other mechanism like that to be able to tell a story over several days to eventually get somebody to want to hear the rest of the story at the end. But this is not just through necessarily a product launch or a challenge. It can be done over multiple social media posts, articles, blogs, vlogs, videos, emails. This is all marketing messages that matter. I would have you consider that everything you do is a marketing message and it matters. Every post. And we go back to brand identity and your own personal identity. Consider yourself a direct response marketer. That means you are asking and recommending and leading people to make a direct response. You have to give them a call to action every post. Now, every call to action is not necessarily buying or selling them something, but it could be like, share, comment, do something. Get them used to taking an action. So when there is time to make an offer, they are used to listening to you and following you and doing what you instruct. Okay, enough of that. Let's keep going. The arrow tip. This is where we strike the target or we strike something we're not supposed to. But this is the moment of truth. Again, if we do this right, we hit the target. If we miss because we don't believe in ourselves, or we close our eyes, or we flinch, if you think about the holding this arrow, if you're flinching, if you're closing your eyes, if you're scared you're going to miss, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is where when the arrow tip strikes the bullseye, that is where an exchange takes place. That is where the solution is delivered in exchange for the money. It's the exchange of value. This is the moment of truth where we make the offer. There's a call to action. We close the sale. There's this value exchange. We give them the solution, which gives them tremendous value in exchange for the money. And this is where we got to tell them to poop or get off the pot, if you're okay with that language. This is where you hold the frame. What I mean by frame is a framework. The frame around a photograph or a piece of art. The piece of art is the center of attention, but the frame sets a boundary and tells us where to look. And the frame, if ornately done, can be art in and of itself. But the frame, we set a frame at the knot. We set a frame at our brand identity and our brand authenticity and congruency. And with our brand story, don't break the frame now. Don't chicken out. Don't be afraid to ask for the money. Make the offer. Do what we do. And remember, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Prospectors don't close. Closers don't prospect. I, as a closer, don't want to do most of the stuff on the front end of finding the people. And remember, there are no prospects. They're suspects until someone has proven they're a buyer and gives you money, even if it's a little bit of money with a low ticket offer, and then move them up the value ladder. I call them suspects. They can say they want a solution, but until they give you the money, they obviously don't want a solution. They're not willing to pay for it. So you hold the frame, you don't chicken out, and this is where the rubber meets the road. So this, in my humble, not so humble opinion, is best delivered in a webinar at the end of the launch or the challenge or whatever. Now, in the good old days when you just ran cold traffic, if you're familiar with that term, people you don't know, they don't know you, they don't love you, they don't trust you. You just happen to get their attention with a provocative headline that says, you got a problem, I got a solution, come check out this free webinar. It's your one and done. It's your one shot. You either nail it or you don't. If the tech goes wrong, if you falter on the webinar, something goes wrong. But if you've already engaged these people over a period of time with a story, then there's less gravity and severity riding on the webinar. But at this point, we use the webinar methodology because it doesn't lose. It wins every time if done right. You can stack on the bonuses, stack on the value, build excitement, create desire and urgency, and a fear of missing out, because we're all humans. And then create the opportunity and offset the opportunity with the opportunity cost. What's it costing you to not take action? And finally, we can future pace, meaning we get them to fast forward 12 months into the future, pretend that they've been working with us and our solution for 12 months, and looking back over the past 12 months, which is really the future 12 months, what would have to happen for it to be the best year of your life? And then they put themselves in a place where, A, if they accept the solution, their life is going to be tremendously better, and they visualize that. And the flip side of that is, if they stay on the path that they're on, they're going to get worse. They're not going to stay the same. Rarely does anybody maintain some level of equilibrium or status quo. There is no such thing. That might be one of the greatest myths. So I'd have you consider, as we're about at the halfway mark, we're at 12:33, that this is a solution that is very clear. I am very clear on what this means to me and to you. So to put this all together, there it all is played out, is I can help with identifying everything inside of brand identity, the brand congruency, starting with small ticket offers, developing those. Because again, one of the greatest analogies that I've heard, other than just archery and arrows as it relates, to sales and marketing in your business, is how closely the analogy runs between business and dating. And so it would be weird to walk up to someone you just met and ask them to start picking out baby names and China patterns as if you're going to get married. That's creepy. That's weird. You would first start a conversation, maybe buy them coffee, invite them to go out to some event, a movie, of this date or that date, maybe then meet the parents, then maybe talk about getting engaged and setting a date. It takes time. And yet in business, we'll walk up to a complete stranger, whether that's literally on an elevator or within an advertisement of some of our social media posts or whatever our sales and marketing strategy is, and go right for, I know you don't know me, but here I am. Don't you want to give me your credit card and give me some money? And the answer is typically not just no, but it's fill in the blank, your favorite expletive, no, get the heck away from me. So it's the same thing as being able to strategize this entire structure from beginning to end, and know that if you found the right person walking them through this, they're going to be your ideal client. If they're not the right person, who cares? What you're going to end up doing is shooting them in the leg or in the head, and we'll get to that now. So I am very clear on how I can help develop a strategy to walk you through this entire sales and marketing system that we call an arrow. So that was number one, done with that. Now let's talk about what it means to apply this framework for you, your business, and your life. So we all got to start somewhere. I would have you consider that this is not modern archery tackle. It looks like a homemade wooden arrow with animal feathers on it. It's a string and a bendy piece of wood. And I'm not saying this person isn't an experienced archer, but the very fact that they're holding the arrow up with their finger is not a good sign. Look, it's okay. You got to start somewhere. My kids aren't experts at bows, but they've all shot bows from the time they were little. I got them age-appropriate bows, something they could pull back. Literally, a child cannot pull back an adult bow. It's too powerful, too much force. So we got to start where we are at our level that we can. But then we graduate from where we are to, I know this is a blurry picture, but I would have you consider that that is not made of wood, that is all man-made composite materials designed for exactly what he's doing. This person has no sights. They have no really good place to put the arrow. This has sights. It has rest. It has all types of modern features. We can help you get there. But this is that moment of truth. He's not flinching. He hadn't closed his eyes. He's not afraid. He's certain that if he follows the mechanics that he's learned how to shoot, and he has released the arrow. And there's this moment where it is not any longer in his control. It is gone. The sales and marketing message has left him and is out there in space headed towards something. Hopefully it's the ideal client and not going to wound some innocent bystander. So again, there's this moment where it's in midair and we've got confidence and yet we're not sure. Is it going to hit the target? Is it going to hit close to the middle? But we got to have some faith. Now, maybe when you're doing a long sales and marketing plan, it may take a while. This, depending on how far you are away, is fractions of a second or a couple seconds at the most. Got some ideas about how it could be a few seconds, but that would be a pretty long shot. And this is the goal. This is what we want. Hit the bullseye. Deliver the ideal solution to our ideal client and have a win-win. But to get here, we got to be willing to get here. That means miss, lose some arrows, maybe lose some money, shoot them in the leg if you would consider that those are the legs of the person. And if the target is the heart, then that arrow at the top hit them between the eyes and hit them in the head. That always tickles me when I do that. So we got to be willing to mess up and to try and to fail. But I want to have you consider that in marketing, there is no failure. There's just data. We take action. We gather data. We put it into a feedback loop. We lather, rinse, repeat, and we do it again. So if you take that mindset, there is no failure. There's just data collection, and we can only get better with practice. Then we go from this to this. But if you can do this once, you can do it again. This is the proverbial dream. This is what Robin Hood would do. What if your challenger, you're the champion, what if the challenger, your competition, comes along and shoots first and nails the bullseye? Only way you can win is split their arrow. And some people are good enough that they split their own. Now, in that analogy, it's the neat thing about slides with no copy is you can interpret these any way you want to. Is this is either a competitor's arrow that you split or this is your own arrow. Maybe the first arrow was your first product or service you delivered, and then you found out that your ideal client had another problem that you could also solve, or you could continue to solve. This is ongoing business or an additional product or service that you were able to create. Whatever helps you best. It's either you split the arrow of your competitor or you split the arrow of your own previous offer. As we keep going, this is a more realistic photograph. There's holes in the paper. You can look and see that there's one arrow in the center of the yellow, but then there's a bunch of other arrows that are also still in the yellow and a couple right on the border of the red. In this analogy, you could consider the fact that this is a lot of different clients, and some you were closer to the center than other. Now, did you still provide value to the one you hit in the red? Yes. Just maybe it wasn't as an ideal solution to them, or maybe they didn't take the necessary action. They didn't put in the effort that the client in the middle did. Or you could consider this like the other slide, that this is the same client and not multiple clients, and that you have provided multiple solutions. Some worked better than others, maybe because some of your solutions are better than others, and some they took more action. They had a bigger why, so they figured out, they applied the how more. So that's why this analogy works for me in so many ways, because if you can do it once, you can do it again and again and again. So to continue, we start here, but your goal, my goal for you, is to end up here. This ain't even a bow. It's called a crossbow. You don't even have to sit there and hold this back. And this, you have to spend energy holding this back and waiting to release it. And if you're scared, you just get tired because you're scared to release, scared to release. Am I going to hit? Am I going to miss? And the longer you wait, the harder it is because you're out of breath, you're trembling, your muscles got a problem. This, you just cock it back and you pull a trigger. It has modern optics. You're not just looking down range and hoping you see a thing. You can now see and target and dial in who the ideal client is. And more importantly, don't shoot the wrong people. Throw your message at the right people. Because when you throw your message at the wrong people, it starts to convince you you don't have a solution. Well, you don't have a solution for that person. So this is modern archery. And that's what we want to get you to. The type of equipment and systems and training that get you at this level. Now, just when you get good at standing on solid ground, maybe the world throws you this. Now you're back to a stick with a string on it, And now the ground is moving because you're on horseback. Oil prices, coronavirus, I don't know what else. And now, instead of standing still, you got to try to hit a target. And then consider when you're riding a horse, not only you moving forward, but you're bouncing up and down. Now, if he's trying to hit a stationary target, that would be hard enough. But consider if this person in ancient times was trying to feed his family, not condoning shooting any cute little animals, but let's say that the thing he's shooting at is not standing still, and it's also moving forward and bouncing up and down. And if you want to be funny, what does this represent? Mobile marketing, get it? So yes, despite that being humorous, you do need to make sure that whatever you design for desktop also looks good on mobile. And that's one of my specialties, showing people, hey, you did some really cool stuff on desktop, but majority of people are consuming content on mobile, and on mobile, they can't read it. They don't know where to push. They don't know what to do. The whole thing melts down. So this is when life throws a challenge at us, and we find out that long form sales letters don't work. So we got to go with a sideways sales letter and figure out how to do a launch. And then they come out with video sales letters, and we got to figure out how to do video sales letters. And we realize people don't watch those anymore. So then they go to webinars, and then people don't show up to webinars anymore. So we go to challenges. We find out people will stop going to challenges. We got to do the next thing. And so there's always a thing. And yet the fundamentals never change. Is getting that arrow. And I would have you consider this. The arrow has to have integrity of all parts. The last time I presented this, something that really resonated with someone in my audience was, you can't take the arrow tip, the shaft, the knock, and the fletching all not put together in your hand and throw it at somebody. You can't take those pieces and put it on the bow. They have to be put together for a purpose, and all working together as one unit. So when you're slinging one arrow down range, that's you and your one effort. But it's been said wisely that if you want to increase your income and your value to others, then increase the amount of offers that you're making to people. Now, if you only have one offer, then that means more traffic. You have to put that offer in front of more people. I don't know if you know this, but traffic is expensive if it's just you. Or you got to have multiple offers. And now you've got to figure out how to provide more solutions. Or you got to have people out there delivering a sales and marketing message for you. So if it's still you and you're a solo entrepreneur or a backpack entrepreneur, then we can have some fun with the character we started with and say, maybe we can put 3 arrows in one bow. That doesn't actually work. It's a TV show. It's cute. And then this is a funnier movie. This is really meant to be a parody and funny. You put 6 arrows on the bow. Yeah, maybe, but still, you've 6 times, but still it's hard to scale when it's just you. So what you're really looking to do at this point is bring about others that can help you. These are either systems or a team of people, whether they're people you hired or people who are partners or joint venture partners, affiliate marketers, whatever. The neat thing about affiliate marketers is you don't have to pay them unless they get you a sale. You don't have to pay sales and marketing people to sit in an office and play on Facebook and you wonder if they're doing anything. But there's systems you can deploy. You can go and find partners, or you can hire people to do all 3. But I want to have you consider, when you look at this picture, even though there's a team of people all shooting at the same target, they're shooting up in the air. Why, I don't know. I don't think the target's in the air. And obviously, they're representing a period in time where the technology wasn't that sophisticated. So what have you considered that maybe you need a team of people with modern tools. And these instruments here are far more sophisticated than what you saw in the previous slide. Okay, so that is why you should care, because it will absolutely change how you engage your customers. Therefore, helping more people, getting more revenue with less stress, less time, less fear, building clarity, building confidence, and building and generating increasingly more revenue and profit without having to trade more time for dollars. A third and final piece, and this is what's going to bring it home for us today. If you got any time, we'll do some Q&A and see where everybody's at. The third and final piece is for us to destroy excuses and take action. So I drew us a little bullseye. Pretend this is bullseye. In the middle is our excuses. We always ask, excuses anyone? Because you possibly came up with excuses while you were watching this. And I found this slide that I thought the slide itself would eliminate excuses. But then someone gave me some feedback, and I would always be open to feedback. Remember, there's a structure, there's a structural integrity to the arrow shaft, but also some flexibility. When somebody says, hey, I would like to know more about that photo. So without further ado, let's talk about the photo and then how I added to this presentation to bring about more of the story to give you more clarity, to hopefully destroy your excuses and get you to take action. We've sat here and talked about archery, shooting an arrow. And here's a man with no arms. And at the first time I presented this photograph, I left a lot of questions. Like I said, hey, he's got an American flag on his shirt. I don't think he's just doing this for sport. I think he's doing this competitively. What if he's just competing with other people who don't have arms? What if he's competing with people who were born? Don't know. Well, now I know. I didn't even know the guy's name. I was just looking for, stock photos for archery. So I spent a little time figuring this out. You go to your favorite browser and you search man with no arms in archery competitions, which is what I did. I didn't know the guy's name. I now know the gentleman's name is Matt Stutzman. I'm not going to make you watch videos today. You're grown. Go and watch some of these videos. It will change your life, especially the 2-minute ones, because the 16-minute one, ain't nobody got time for that. So it just goes on and on and on, and you can see the links that are a little bit more purple than blue I clicked on. I'm going to bring you the highlights from those articles so we can understand this man's story and what it means to us. Because again, I love your story, Stephen. It's great. What does it mean to me? Glad you asked. I'm going to tell you. Man with no arms wins archery gold when he was born without arms. No medical rhyme or reason for it. His biological parents abandoned him. Can you say that was a bad deal out the gate? He was adopted, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him, like hitting the lottery. I want you to consider that this man thinks that his parents abandoning him because he was born with no arms is the best thing that ever happened to him. You want to talk about mindset. He was raised on a farm with 7 brothers and sisters, and you know how brothers and sisters are. They picked on him. What kind of human beings does it take to pick on a guy with no arms? He said his sisters used to steal his Hershey's Kisses, and he would hide them in his armpit because even though he didn't have arms, he has an armpit. And of course, when they finally found him, they were melted, and he laughed at that. He said, my brother would throw arrows at me. One day I picked one up and threw it at him with my foot. I hit him right between the eyes. He never threw apples at me again. He eats bananas with his feet. He answers email. He drives. But he doesn't iron his clothes because, as one archer said, because he chooses not to. He's married. He has kids. He learned how to shoot this bow and arrow with his feet. And at the time, he wasn't planning on being an archery expert. He literally asked his wife, you watching the video, to forego a month paying the rent to buy him his first bow as an adult. They skipped paying the rent to buy a bow so he could put food on the table. He started deer hunting to put food on the table. He found sponsors so he could get money to go in archery tournaments. One day a buddy, and don't you love it when guys shoot you straight? These are defining moments, y'all. These are the defining moments in people's lives. When his buddy had the gumption to tell him the truth. Matt, the reason they sponsor you is because you have no arms and you draw attention to the product. It's not because you're good, meaning good at archery. It's not because you're good. It's because you're a freak. He didn't use those words. That's what he was saying. Well, Matt could have got sad, mad, ran and hid, and said he decided he would get good. That was in 2010. Let me highlight this for you. Not bragging, but in 2010, I decided to be the best archer in the world. By 2011, I was on the U.S. team. 2012, I made my first games and won silver. What he's saying here is if I can take a bow that's not modified for me. In other words, it's not a special bow made for a guy with no arms. It's a bow because to shoot in these competitions, they can't give him any favoritism. Yes, he shoots in Paralympics, but he also shoots in competitions where no one else has a handicap. I can compete against people that have arms and beat them in their own sport. If that's the case, then what's everyone else's excuse? We're getting there. Look, We all have dreams and aspirations. And at some time in our lives, we inevitably will be plagued with thoughts of self-doubt and fear of failing. In those times, you need a little self-confidence. You need a boost. You need inspiration. Look no further than this guy, the armless archer, who won first place at the U.S. Archery Outdoor National Championship. It didn't say para anything, okay? He was born healthy. His adoptive parents said, you figure it out. Now, I like this part right here. It wasn't always intuitive. I Googled how to shoot with no arms, and there was nothing. I want you to think about when, to tie this all up, when Jeff Walker came up with the product launch formula, there was nothing to Google. It didn't exist. He had to create it. He had to figure it out. When Pedro Adao started challenges, there was no Googling challenges. He had to figure it out. Now we can go buy a product from these gentlemen to tell us what they figured out. We don't have to spend years of blood and sweat and tears like this guy figuring it out. There was no how to shoot with no arms. He had to figure it out. He developed a method for him with a normal bow. And to bring this home for you guys, because it's coming up on the hour. Man born without arms, that's the headline. Stutzman says his new tagline has become, what's your excuse? It's a guy without arms can get a bow and sit down and compete with the rest in the world of the sport with them using their arms. What's your excuse? Why aren't you doing what you want to do? Get off the couch and get it done. What's your excuse? Now, if that's killed your excuses, we now understand that sales and marketing will get us control over our business and therefore our time and our lives and our profit and our revenue. And there are no excuses, because in this analogy, if a man with no arms can not just shoot a bow, but shoot at the highest level, we have no handicaps. We have no excuses. There's nothing we either can't Google and figure out, or if we're trying to do something that doesn't exist, we'll figure it out like this guy, like Jeff Walker, like Ryan Dice over at Digital Marketer. When a lot of the things that we take for granted nowadays, somebody had to figure out. ClickFunnels didn't exist until Russell Brunson built it. Kartra didn't exist until a team of entrepreneurs built it, like Frank Curran and some of my mentors, and Andy Jenkins and Matt Carnegie and a lot of guys. So we can all stand on the shoulders of giants, have access to all of these tools and techniques. Again, you don't always need software. ClickFunnels isn't just a software. Kartra isn't a software. Software is junk. You need a strategy that delivers a solution through a system. If software will help you do that, then it's good software. And with that, no more excuses. Go ahead, clap. That's the best presentation you've seen at noon Eastern time today, even though some of you got here late. Go ahead. All right. That's what I got planned for you today. The path forward is either I or someone else can help you figure all this out. You can do it alone. You can go find somebody else. We can figure out how we can partner up and I can help you do this.